Hey everyone, welcome back to the It's Mind Game podcast. My name is Jade. I'm a personal trainer and mindset coach specializing in HA, ED recovery, and female specific training protocols. Today, I'm super excited to be welcoming back Beth, who joined us, perhaps a month ago to share with us her HA recovery journey. And now she's here to share with us more of the insights on how she actually got to that first bleed. Welcome, Beth.
Hi, welcome everyone again. Just going into it in a bit more depth this time.
Yeah, we left that first one going, there's so much to talk about. Schedule part 2. So here we are. Now, Beth has kindly given us a few key points to run through because it tends to be the most focus points throughout the HA recovery journey. But let's start off with, I guess, one of the key elements, which is fuel. How do you feel like your relationship with food changed and perhaps is still changing now? Because it's not as though you get your period back and all of a sudden, boom, everything's magically fixed. But what were the big changes that you witnessed and perhaps are still working on now?
Yeah, so when I was sort of starting off my recovery, I think I was still a little bit stringent on food before exercising, and I didn't really think that I needed an adequate amount of food before I did a workout. So I'd say probably a few months into working in the HA community, I kind of stepped it up a little bit. So before I might have just had a very small snack before the gym, whereas now I tend to have, if I'm doing a workout, I'll have a breakfast before I go to the gym and then I'll have one after. So normally I'll have some oats and maybe a protein yogurt mixed in with them, and then I'll have some toast and some sausages and egg afterwards. So it's a lot compared to what I was having before. And maybe I'd just go off a banana or something quite small. So I started seeing fuel, food as more fuel for my workouts in order to improve my performances. Because I felt like before I was just maybe going because I'd already had that background of you need to train fasted because this will help you burn calories and eat quicker, and this will make you slimmer. So I think my mindset changed around wanting to do it more for performance and strength building rather than, okay, you can eat as little as possible. And to me before, it was, 2 breakfasts is a no-go because then I've already eaten most of my calories in the morning.
How do you feel like your training's changed since you upped the ante on the fuel? Because the banana can be the suggestion amongst quite a few different sources. Just having a banana before you train and that's fine. And also, I guess there's a few key things to add in. That one, a banana is great in the way that you still are breaking the fast. But when you are actually looking to build strength or have increased adaptations from training, a spike in protein before you train is really important, especially around that 20 to 30 gram mark, which is where I love how you said the oats and the protein yogurt. Yes, she's getting it in. What did you notice about your training from going from just a banana to having the oats and the yogurt?
I think I just feel like I can actually perform. Before I was maybe just thinking, when is the workout going to end? Because I need to eat. That's what my thoughts were beforehand. I was oh my gosh, let's get this workout done as quick as possible so that I can go home and have a proper breakfast. Whereas now, it doesn't bother me that my workout's probably an hour and I'm okay, I'm not rushing back to get food because I'm not hangry because I've had something that has kept me going and has fueled my workout. And yeah, I think a lot of what you see on social media, it does make you doubt what you're doing, because someone's always saying, well, I do this and I do this. And when you see maybe what I eat in a day videos, they're not sort of having a bigger meal before the gym. So I think it does trigger a little bit of doubt, and that's still something that I'm working on, because what you feel works for you then can be doubted by what you may be seeing on social media.
Yeah, and as you brought up with the what I eat in a days and whatnot, it's important to recognize the sources you're getting this information from, because you brought up something really important, which is you went from getting through your workout kind of hanging for it to end versus fueling properly, and you can actually sit in the workout and enjoy it and focus, and I'm sure do much heavier lifts than what you were doing because you've got the adequate fuel. So when you look at so many women in HA recovery, like, yeah, but I still want to have a physique goal. Like, I just don't want to let go of my body. And you can absolutely have a physique goal. Like, there's nothing wrong or disordered about having a physique goal, unless it's, too far on the extreme. If you want to look like a figure competitor on stage, it's very unlikely you've got a good hormonal profile. But fueling appropriately, getting that protein in beforehand so that you can actually train really well is the best way for you to get those adaptations. And as you sort of brought up as well, the eating less is going to help get that sort of thin or like skinny kind of body. But if you're training to fuel, that's what's going to build up the lean muscle, which for the most part, as you would know in the HA community, when we speak to the ladies in there, most of them, one, still love training and want to continue training. And two, they still want their body to look like sporty or athletic or a little bit toned. Like, that's really important to them. What body changes have you noticed since you've increased your fuel?
I think I've definitely obviously noticed that I can't fit, like none of my skirts and things fit me anymore because I've built my glutes. And then I am starting to see some more toned elements, but when I'm having a bad body image day, I'll be like, oh, I've just gained fat and that's it. But I know that that's just my brain playing tricks on me, because I know that there's no way I could have weight trained and eaten adequate protein and just gained fat. So that's when the logical part of my brain kicks in. But yeah, I'd say that I just feel I don't know, more athletic, because before I just felt really weak. And although from the outset people would say, oh wow, your cardiovascular fitness is amazing, you're really physically fit, but then you have to question what is physically fit, because for someone who has a really good cardiovascular system but they can't run for long periods because it can damage their bone and joint health, then it isn't really the definition of optimum health and physical fitness. So that's a big change for me as well, from being someone who's always been referred to as skinny to someone who's now stronger, and I don't get the same bodily aches or struggle with long distance of walking. Even I used to feel my joints used to be quite fatigued if I walked a lot of steps, whereas now I feel better. My body just feels more supported.
Yeah, and there's a lot of evidence going out there now, and a lot more people in the health and fitness space that are saying how the 10,000 steps kind of thing is okay, but for the most part, these protocols where there is just high amounts of cardio, they're not sustainable long term for most people, because genetically some people have really good joints or they have good tendons and muscle fibers and whatnot, so they can run 10Ks a day and feel properly and their bodies just handle it. But for a vast majority of the population, strength training as a priority is so much better for their aging process, especially for women, because I think once we turn 30, once we turn 50, we lose 3% of muscle mass every single year. So unless we're doing weights training to preserve it, it's just going away, right? And it sounds kind of scary when you hear it, but it's not that hard to maintain it. So if you're building up all this muscle now, the way that it helps you moving forward for the rest of your life and aging gracefully is absolutely incredible. You're never going to regret these choices. Also talking about the food front, you mentioned in chats between us previously that you got a lot more firm with their meal timing and eating every 3 hours. Perhaps what was your routine like with meals before getting a lot more firm with that? And what is it that made you kind of go, all right, enough's enough, let's just do the every 3 hour thing?
Yeah, so before I even started the HA recovery, like I used to go like 6, 7, 8 hours without eating. Like I'd have like a big gap because I'd be in my head, I was quite rigid that this is meal times. If you're not sticking to meal times, then you've got no self-control. Like that's what my brain used to say to me, and what my past eating disorder thoughts were. So I think when it was maybe around like Christmas, I'd been in the HA community like a couple of months, and I was having like I don't know, a mid-morning snack, and I was having my 3 meals, but then I wasn't really having a snack, like a proper snack between like lunch and dinner. Like it might have been like a handful of crisps or something like that. Like it wasn't something that I would say was that fueling. So then I think when I was in the community after Christmas, I was like, right, like obviously I've not got my period back yet. I'm doing a lot of exercise. Like I need to learn to just be strict and stick to that. And then I was hungry. Like a lot of people in the HA community say that they don't have the hunger cues and they struggle with hunger, whereas like I was the opposite. I was hungry, like I was able to eat the food. So I thought, why am I ignoring like such a vital signal? So that's when I decided to step it up, and just wanted to feel like not like grumpy and not hungry. I didn't want to feel like that anymore. I thought I've felt like that for far too long.
Yeah, I love that. And it's important to highlight that, as you said, some women do struggle with getting the hunger cues back. Others have got between, heavy and extreme hunger cues as well. Did you find though, as you started going through the process, because you had kind of made some progress on your own before joining the community with Claudia and I, but did you notice that there was a period where perhaps your hunger cues were kind of dormant, like they were there, but not necessarily to the point where it was nagging at you, like you're at work and it's like, come on, Beth, I'm hungry. Let's go have something to eat. Come on, Beth. But all of a sudden you started putting a few steps forward, and then all of a sudden that cue got a little bit more noisy to the point where you're like, oh wow, I think I actually have to listen to this now because my body's making it incredibly clear I'm hungry.
Yeah, so I think when I started doing and sticking to the every 3 hours, like hunger just really like settled. Like even now I don't think I ever get to the point where I used to, like where I used to be really hungry and I used to be like, I feel thin, or like I feel like my blood sugar's really low. Like during recovery, I think it definitely, like if I'd missed a snack time or a meal, like if I missed it a bit by like maybe half an hour to an hour, then I'd start feeling that really like low blood sugar dip. But now I'd say that they've stabilized, and like I'm still eating every 3 hours. So I think I'm still quite stable right now.
Yeah. And did you notice the symptoms of not eating were more noticeable as you went on? Because I'm just thinking about how you said the lightheadedness, the
Yeah.
hangry, irritability, perhaps even you might have noticed your anxiety is higher when you're not feeling as well. Because I know when I was going through HA, I had so many of these symptoms that I didn't even notice they were a thing because I'd been experiencing them for so long. And then all of a sudden I started fueling properly. And I would notice that just as I got to that 3.5 hour mark, I was going to go have something to eat anyway. But I would notice my body start to go wild on me. Like I would feel lightheaded. I would feel my blood pressure change. And I'd be like, oh my goodness, has this always happened? Because it seems so incredibly obvious to me right now. But I don't recall it being that obvious, 6 months ago.
I think you're right. Like, I think when I started feeling properly, they were stronger. Like before, like I think when I was like more like in my eating disorder, like I was very good at ignoring it. But as soon as I did something to like not ignore it, like as soon as I stopped being so busy and on the go, then I'd be like that. I'd experience that really like low blood sugar feeling. But yeah, I'd say that when I was feeling more in HA, then I did definitely have like those really bad hunger experiences.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you went from having, like, say, a handful of crisps in between lunch and dinner to something a little bit more satiating, what's an example of what you swapped to?
So I normally have like some cereal and some, like, it might be like just normal cereal like Cocoa Pops, but with like quite a bit of milk. Or then I'll have like, I make like oat muffins. So I might just have like an oaty muffin or a protein yogurt, or I always have a protein bar in the morning with a coffee. That's like my
So
favorite
good.
snack. Yeah, the best morning snack. So yeah, something a bit more like cereal or like an oat based like thing that I've made. So that's more what I have now.
Just by changing that snack over, do you feel your attitude at dinner is any different? So like perhaps getting to dinner being really hungry and perhaps even a bit grumpy versus getting to dinner now just being like, oh, dinner's ready, this is nice, la 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 la.
I'm not like, dinner isn't the main focus of the day really anymore. Like, whereas before it would have been like, oh my God, it's dinner time. Like, I can't wait to eat because I've not eaten properly all day. Like now I'd say that dinner is probably, I am still hungry, but it's my least hungriest time of the day because I felt like I've eaten throughout the whole day. And then I'm not, like you say, getting to dinner and feeling like, oh my God, I'm so like hungry and I could eat this and this and like eat everything in one go. So I'm not like anxious or like hungry when it's dinner time.
And because you've freed up some of that brain space, do you feel like your personality shines a bit brighter? Perhaps you're showing up more in your relationships. Perhaps you're better at even just setting boundaries for yourself. Like, I need some time to go do my thing, or perhaps I need a break from this or a break from that. How has that shown up in your life now that you're not sort of always going, I can't wait till dinner, or I can't wait till the next meal, or just I'm starving, but I have to wait another 3 hours because it's not time?
Yeah, I think I can concentrate more like in my job, and I can offer more like at work. I feel like I've got more brain energy, whereas like before I was just really not, like I was lacking, like I don't know, even just I had like a meeting today with like a student, and then I'm supervising her for her masters, and I was just like felt really like switched on, like I just knew everything that I was talking about, whereas like before I might have felt a bit doubtful, or in my the back of my mind I might have been like, oh, when can I eat, or like those food thoughts would have cropped up and I wouldn't have been concentrating or like focusing as much. And I think in terms of the setting boundaries, like I'd say that me and my partner have had more like arguments of late because I'm aware of what is like expected and what I want. So I've got a bit more clarity on like what I'm willing to like accept.
Yeah,
in
and
terms.
stand up for yourself as well. That's great though, because you need to have the capacity to have difficult conversations, especially with people that we love, right? Because it's sharing our truth. You've brought up a really important part of your recovery, because changing your work environment was a massive change for you. When we first met, you were on the go with visiting clients in-house. You were walking a whole lot. I believe you were carrying a decent amount with you as you were walking from client to client. Cold weather conditions, big days, exhausted. And then there was a change. Do you want to describe what the change was and how that affected your recovery?
So like then I got a job as like a lecturer, so I wasn't like in the healthcare system anymore. So rather than like being out and about in the cold and carrying like weighing scales with babies, like I'm just in the classroom, or I can work from home when I'm marking. So it was just more like and I think it was more around like feeling valued as well, because I was doing all of that walking around, and I felt burnt out. I felt that I wasn't being valued, whereas now I'm in a job where like people are happy to have you there, like you're kind of not treated like a slave, and you've got more space to grow and learn. So I think that was a big thing for me, because when you're treated like you have to be on the go all the time, that feeds into like your home life as well. So I'd come home from work and I'd want to clean, I'd want to tick everything off my list in order to feel safe. So I went from like controlling obviously like my eating to the only thing that I had left was like controlling like my home environment, and I had some OCD like tendencies, so I felt like I couldn't switch off until I'd ticked every box, and then I could sit down and enjoy dinner or enjoy a snack.
We will jump into the cleaning and chores side of things, because that was something you did want to discuss. But super quick, because your work environment changed quite dramatically, like you went from walking everywhere carrying the scales and whatnot into a job where you're standing out lecturing, perhaps you're sitting down while you're marking at home. How did that affect you mentally? Because even though you know the rest was going to be beneficial for HA recovery, you would also drastically reduce your exercise, which can play on us a little bit. So did you find that you kind of graciously stepped into this change, or was there some little thoughts creeping in of like, oh, Beth, you're not walking today, like, what are you doing? What happened there?
I mean, don't get me wrong, like I still enjoy a walk. Like I wouldn't say I'm completely like staying all day doing like my work or whatever. So I think at first I was a bit uncertain, because I was like, oh, that's going to be stripped away from me. I'm going to have to be inside all day, and I'm not going to be able to walk from A to B. So I think it was a bit uncomfortable at first, because it's like the fear of the unknown and how it like might affect you. And then maybe my brain was saying, oh, now you're going to have a sedentary job, and this is a downward spiral. But I did in the end just like fall into a place of like comfort, because it was like comforting not to be out in the cold and in the elements. And like I knew that I could work at home, and it was just more comfortable, like knowing that I didn't have to rush out the door every day, and those kinds of things I really like accepted. Like, and the more sleep was so beneficial for me. Like I just think that extra time to rest and then not wake up and feel like you're just exhausted every day.
Yeah, and as you said as well before with the walking, it's not as though you're just sitting on your bottom all day long now because of this new job. Like you still go out for walks because it's something you enjoy, it's good for your health. Because I think another myth of HA recovery is that you have to sit on the couch and watch Netflix and chill. And it's just not the case. Like in these super extreme cases, it might be necessary that you're so very undernourished that it's like, please just go have a nap, just go lie down. But in other cases, going for a walk every day is completely fine. Like it's wonderful for our body and for our mental health. And the way you sort of responded was more, you've just gone from your walks being scheduled throughout the day for work, being to perhaps before, after, or on a lunch break with your new job. You've just found a new sort of schedule to get some outside activity in.
And it's like the timing as well. Like it's obviously like it was unavoidable for me what time I went when I was out visiting clients. And I found that I would like my mid-morning snack that I like really needed because I was walking from A to B. I found that I'd like miss it because I'd wait ages for it because I'd want to get back and be safe and have it with a cup of tea. So it was really like a challenging thing then as well, because like the eating times were out of my control. So but then did start being a little bit stricter at the end of that job before I moved on to the new job, and I was like, right, I'll have to stop and have a break at a coffee shop in between my visits. So I used to schedule that in because I was like, I can't just wait until like 1-2 o'clock and then I've missed my mid-morning snack.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does involve strategy, getting those snacks in, like you said, the detour to the cafe, which, we've seen a few cafe pics of you at is it university or college? It's university. Yeah.
Yes.
And he'll be like, oh, it's cappuccino. It's like, yes,
so good.
Go Beth. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the cleaning and chores, because for a long time that kind of prohibited your ability to relax, to go out and do other activities, to perhaps have dinner earlier if you're feeling like ridiculously hungry, because you felt like everything had to be in perfect order. Everything, as you said, all the boxes had to be ticked. And if it wasn't, that was incredibly unsettling. How has that changed from how it was to how you perceive things now?
I think like it's really hard to explain, because like once one thing calms, like everything seems to just calm together. Like once my anxiety over like being out and not feeling safe when I was like having to rush out the door and constantly feeling burnt out, like once that had calmed down, then like naturally everything else seemed to calm down, and it wasn't like everything had to be fast paced, tick tick tick. Whereas now I think it's just like, oh, like, well, what does it matter if like I'm still packing my lunch after I've eaten my dinner? Like, what does that really matter? Like, I'm still doing it. It's not that there's anything wrong with that. And like, because I'm able to have rest throughout the day, I don't feel like I have to tick every box until I can rest, because I've still had rest throughout the day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be important for women listening to note that constant on the go feeling, excuse me, almost like an adrenaline race all the time, can be a sign of being in that fight flight response, or also being just riddled with cortisol, because it almost masks itself in our reality as I'm just super productive and I like to get things done. And it can present itself in a way that it's really easy for us to justify, because we can't possibly imagine sitting down and relaxing because we've got so much energy. But the energy isn't really our organic energy, it's a stress response energy, which is often harder to calm down because it's a kind of I'm going to save you energy. But once the ducks start to align, that's when women start to notice, oh wow, I don't feel like I'm running everywhere, I don't feel like everything's a rush, I don't feel like I'm going a million miles an hour, because they've stepped out of that sympathetic response. Which is the way how you described it happened. It's sort of like one progression happened, two progressions happened, and suddenly that housework sort of chore orientation just kind of reduced a whole lot. And I'm sure you're still keeping the house like impeccably clean and all, like everything's still getting done, but
Yeah.
it's not with this like army regime. Instead, it's just, oh, I can be a bit more spontaneous. I might do that after dinner. I might do that tomorrow morning. Like everything's going to be okay.
And it was even to the point like, oh, like I need to wash my hair, that's another tick box. Whereas like now it's like, oh, I'll do it when I've got lots of time to do it. And then it's a chore, it's not deemed as a chore, because that's obviously like an act of self-care, really. Like having a good hair wash is something you want to feel good about.
That's a great example of being in like robot mode though, isn't it? It's like, rather than see things as, oh, but I kind of enjoy washing my hair, I enjoy even like getting your eyebrows waxed or something. It could be something so simple, but everything's so strict and to the minute that it takes away from your capacity to even enjoy something simple like washing your hair or just having clean, fresh hair, because you're too caught up in, oh, it's done now, what's next. So thank you for bringing that point up, because it's like we can get through the same amount of tasks that we always have had, but completely change the energy towards it. And it's a constant win once that happens, because I'm sure, as everyone knows, it can be a pain in the bottom washing your hair, especially if it's really long or it doesn't dry very fast or it's killy. But going from that, like, just get it done, to just, oh, this smells really nice, this feels really nice, it changes that energy of the moment. Next one to talk about, which is our final one today. We're blasting through these topics, and I love all the information that you're dropping for us, Beth. The bodily signs before your period arrived. So this would probably be one of the most common DMs I get, or emails from the HA recovery ladies, because we kind of know the basic ones in regards to tender breast, perhaps cervical mucus. But was there some other things that you noticed?
So even like before I got my period back, like I had to go to the doctors for something, and like they'd done my blood pressure, and like my blood pressure's always been really, really low. Like I'd always say, oh, that's just me, like I'm this, that and the other, my blood pressure is always going to be low. And I obviously didn't know what that meant for me, I just thought that's me. But then I went and it was like normal, and this was like a month before like I got my period back, like my blood pressure was normal, my pulse rate was like normal, like as in a better normal, like it was like blood was actually like pumping through my body correctly. And then my temperature, my body temperature, used to always sit at like 35 something, like whenever I used to check it on the thermometer. So my body temperature, like, and I felt warmer more frequently. I really struggled with being like cold all the time, and I know probably a lot of people can relate.
So common.
I was literally like, I used to hate winters, particularly when I moved to Scotland. Like I started even when I was only just like working on it in the October when I started the HA community, I started feeling like winter was more tolerable than it had been in the past. And I just put this down to like, oh, I've gained a bit of weight, that's why. But I think it was the fact that my body was just like working better, that I was able to deal with the cold. So yeah, and then I think before I got the period, I had like a cycle but without a bleed. So this was like I'd gone through all of the stages of a typical period, and then like a month later I got went through the same stages and then got the bleed. So there were some of the signs, but it was mainly just like I see the acupuncturist and she's like, oh, it's blood nourishment. We're working on blood nourishment. It was mainly like that particular sign that I was like, wow, like my blood pressure's normal, like everything's like stabilizing. So yeah, and then I think like I went for a DEXA scan as well. Maybe I think that might have been after I got my period back, but that my bones and joints, she said they were like better than average for my age. And I never have thought that with obviously what I thought I'd put my body through, but I think I've done a lot of like repair, and that's been beneficial. So they were the main things.
Awesome. And just to clarify, when you said the temperature was 35, was that you were checking your BBT?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the cycle before, when you didn't have the bleed, when you saw the different stages, you mean you watched the LH kick, you watched the drop, and then
it was the like feelings, and then obviously the cervical mucus and all of that. So like obviously me like monitoring it, and I've never used any like technical no testing kits or anything like that, but
you felt the
I'd
wave.
gone yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. And I love that you brought to the forefront the temperature changes too, though, because even in my experience with HA, I actually got diagnosed with Raynaud's disease because my circulation was so poor in my hands and feet. And obviously I do not have Raynaud's and my circulation's wonderful. But I remember just suffering, and your winters are much colder than here in Melbourne. But oh my gosh, I would suffer so much in winter. And I remember that first winter where it wasn't like excruciating. So I remember my fingers would be so cold that like I couldn't bend them. They were like purple. I couldn't even use the touch screen on my phone because it wouldn't pick up the heat from my fingertips. And I was the manager of one of the gyms at the time. And I remember having to pick up coins from the cash register because someone had purchased, and I couldn't grab and I was so embarrassed. I had to call someone over to pick up the coin for me. And I had no idea, because my mum's got less than average circulation. So I kind of just thought I was taking on board her issues. And then all of a sudden, this one completely relieved itself. And the impact on your life is actually incredible. You don't realize how much suffering in the cold really wears you down, especially, you get a good chunk of the year out of it. And that was probably one of my favorite things of recovery, alongside obviously growing my family and trusting that I'm fertile and my periods are going to keep coming. But the circulation was wonderful, like such a great improvement. You've had a few periods now, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Three.
Woohoo! Our favorite number. Right. And plenty more to come. If I can quickly dabble into it, when you've had your period back once before and jumped a little bit too heavily into exercise, and that was something that scared you this time around. I remember when you got your first one back. You're like, Jade, I don't want that to happen again. And I could tell it wouldn't, because you were too concerned about it happening to make it happen, if that makes sense. Like if it was going to happen again, your thoughts would have been coming from the opposite side of the fence, where instead you're like, how am I going to hold steady? How am I going to make sure this next one comes? And you could tell you wanted to get this right. How's this time around affected you versus the first time? Like the first time you jumped back into exercise, but this time you've continually exercised and you're fueling really well. Could you shed a little bit of light, I guess, on just how your mindset is different from that first time versus where you're at now, through periods in training, your job, just thriving, to say the least?
Yeah, so I think that last year when I had the one, I was very like worried and focused around like body image still, and I think I was still like holding myself back, thinking, oh, I've got away with it, like I've got my period back, like I can continue to be the size and weight that I am without needing to do any more, and I can just throw myself back into exercise because this is all ended now, like this inconvenience is ended and I'm okay. Whereas this time I was like very, very wary, and like I'm still wary even after having 3. I'm like, I want to get my cycles more regular. I think I'm more like health driven, and then in the future, like maybe in the not so long away, like I want to have a baby, so I want to be like in optimum fertility for that as well. So I think I'm more focused on like that. I think I'd be lying if I said that I've not had like the itch to do a little bit more, because I did used to like enjoy doing like cardio, but then that was all I used to do. So now I'm just wanting to do maybe like a little bit more than just walking. But like I know that's not necessarily a bad thing just to want to do a little bit more, but I'm still feeling like a bit cautious. And I think overall I'd say that I'm just more about nourishment, whereas like last year I was like, oh well, I've got away with it, so how can like I just cut it back again and still healthy cycle. So I think I'm more nourishing and nurturing than I was maybe last year towards my.
And even your language is quite different, like linking back to the start of the podcast, where you're fueling and training for strength and power, and performance, versus that like perhaps moving to be as skinny as possible, as light as possible, because the ammo behind each intention is so different. Because if you're nourishing to perform and get strong, like you have no choice but to nourish appropriately, because it's the pathway to it, versus that always sort of battling the scale or trying to be that smallest version of yourself. And you'll absolutely be able to add the cardio back in. It's just that small progression, and then you build upon that. Our bodies aren't broken because we've had HA. It's just we had that little flashing light of, hey, you've got to remedy this, and now you've had your 3 periods. You can start leveling it up, but we'll talk about that some more. And and you'll be able to run and do anything you want, really. But it's just about keeping in those non-negotiables and prioritizing fuel always, and your body will just thank you. And you'll do the training, you'll have the babies, it'll be beautiful.
Be strong, and they'll have good cardiovascular systems too.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely. And like I'll do some more podcasts on it in the future, but training during pregnancy and how beneficial it is for the baby, like it's so wonderful for both mum and bub. But thankfully, just like the research on HA, the research on training while pregnant is becoming a lot more known and better research, so women aren't so scared of cooking the baby, as they say in the past. Well, Beth, this has been an incredible, well-rounded conversation. I'm so glad we got through all of these topics, because no doubt some of the ladies listening in recovery would want to know all of those juicy elements of your experience. I just wanted to thank you again for taking the time to come on and have a chat with us. And I really, really appreciate all of the information that you had to offer today. And most of all, I'm just so proud of you. You're absolutely thriving. You're doing wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Now, ladies, I'll leave Beth's Instagram in the comments section in case you want to reach out and have a chat with her. And I'll leave my contact details below if you'd like to learn more about the program Beth was in. But for now, thanks so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.